Newcastle United finished their pre-season in style with two back-to-back wins at St James's Park at the weekend. A win on the Saturday, a win on the Sunday, and lifting the Sela Cup as we now prepare for the start of the Premier League season. We will be back at St James's Park for the third time in a week when we take on Aston Villa at 5:30. Cannot wait for that one. And a player who was at St James's Park at the weekend, watching us win the Sela Cup, passes his medical, is here at Newcastle, is Tino Livramento. I want to talk a little bit about him, the player who could potentially start this weekend. So we'll get into that. And just when you think we've brought in a £40 million right back, that could well be the end of the window, not according to Eddie Howe. He has said that he hopes to potentially bring in a couple more players, and we're already being linked to a few, one of which we were linked with about a month or so ago, and it's starting to gather a little bit more heat in that centre-back position. So we will talk about him in this video as well. Yes, guys, welcome back to Toon Tuesdays, your weekly roundup of Newcastle United news, a series that I've been running for a good few years now, where we collate all of the week's Newcastle news and put it into one video. If you do watch this series every week but haven't subscribed yet, be sure to go ahead and hit that big red button. It really helps the channel, and I do want to say a big thank you to Ian Anderson, my newest member over on Patreon. I set this up a couple of weeks ago now. It's a chance to help support the daily videos on this channel, at the same time getting some extra content as well. It's £5 a month, so if you're interested, be sure to go and take a look, and a big thank you to Ian, as I say, the newest member over there. So, let's get into the video, starting off with the Sela Cup. As I mentioned, a great event at St James's Park, a great chance for a lot of fans to get in the stadium and watch two games in 2 days. You'll remember we did this last season. I think it was actually the Friday and the Saturday we did it. This time, Saturday, Sunday, it wasn't just Newcastle. There was 5 games in total, so plenty of football. And there was some huge positives. I think the positives were pretty much all on the pitch, so I will come on to that in a moment. But I will touch on, not the negatives, but I think maybe some teething issues. And I think the big thing for me is, I'd rather have these teething problems at a friendly game where we can get over it than have it on Saturday against Aston Villa, when everyone's stressed, everyone's trying to get in the ground, the tickets are new, the card machines aren't working at the bars. There was a few things going on. I think the main thing was the tickets was always going to be a bit of a question mark. At least now everyone's had their chance. If you went to the friendly and your ticket didn't work, you know to make sure to get it sorted for the real deal. Trying to change a 50,000 seater stadium from paper tickets or plastic cards to digital phones is a big move. Mine worked fine, which I'm thankful for, but I do know some people had a few issues. Those people now know to get it sorted in time for next week. The other thing was that all the card machines weren't working, so if you didn't have cash, you couldn't go to the bar. And bearing in mind, if you got in there at 10 in the morning for the early kickoff and weren't going to leave until after the women's game, the late kickoff, you're inside of St James's Park for 9 hours, you can't leave, you can't buy any food. The club did act quickly. That's one thing I will say. They quickly made a system where you could get a wristband to go outside, queue for an hour at the Tesco to get cash out, which wasn't great, but at least they were adapting, they were trying to be dynamic with the situation. And as I say, I'm pretty sure they'll make sure that's working for the Aston Villa game. So yeah, I wouldn't say negatives, I would say teething annoyances, but that I would rather have ready for the main season. The Sela Cup as a whole, what I would look at is maybe the fact that you couldn't leave the stadium to come back in. I get that they want to try and make as much money on food and drinks in the stadium as you can, but for families with little kids and stuff, being there all day is a long day. Going for the early game, and then we saw it with the women's game later on the Saturday, the crowds went way down. For anyone who's been in there since 10 in the morning, can't leave, can't go and have pizza in town and have a refresh and come back, being asked to stay in the stadium for that amount of time with food that isn't always the greatest, in my opinion. Would love to see that improved over the next few years. And then because of that, the women had a lesser crowd, which I thought was unfair to them, considering they've been packing out the stadium for 25, 30,000 people. They didn't need to be kind of put on the end, so yes, maybe some improvements could be made. But the main positive for me was what happened on the pitch. Eddie Howe had a chance to really get his lads that final bit of, I guess, fitness, but also playing in front of a crowd in the stadium and working together. And I think Eddie Howe having 2 games back to back each day, really, you could say, is that going to overdo it before the season? No, because he played 2 separate sides. And we talk a lot about squad depth and will we have it for the season? Look, for the start of the season, when we've got a game at the weekend, maybe a midweek game or a Champions League, the likes of Bruno and Joe Linton or Sven Botman, Pope, they're going to play every game, let's be honest. But as we get later in the season, you need to know that you've got players who can make it work. And being able to have literally 2 flat sides, a Saturday side and a Sunday side, and for them both to win is a massive positive. Really, you look at the midfield 3, talk about last season and wanting more depth in the midfield. We've bought Tonali, but watching him play alongside Miley and Anderson were quality. You know, those are 2 players that we've brought through the ranks. There was talk on needing, 2 centre midfielders this summer window. We've brought Tonali in. That conversation's gone quiet, hasn't it? Because when you've got the likes of Miley and Anderson coming through, people aren't jumping all over it anymore. Then on the next day, you've got Bruno, Joe Linton and Longstaff, and that's not even including Joe Willock, who wasn't even there. So yes, I think depth-wise in certain positions we could still do with a little bit of help, but overall, I was pretty happy with it. So you guys let me know your thoughts down below. Who was your man of the match for the Sela Cup? Mine, well, I think a lot of the plaudits will go to Harvey Barnes, the man who makes his St James's Park debut and scores twice. Neither were spectacular goals. They weren't necessarily pretty goals, but to just literally stand over the ball, smack it in hard along the ground, happy days. That's what we need. It's a player who will run direct at the goal, will take his chances, and will put the ball in the back of the net. And I think you talk about coming up on this weekend of who will start on that left-hand side. I think Gordon made a great case for himself. I think Barnes has just made a great case for himself as well. I think you look at the likes of Miggy scoring over the weekend as well. Murphy got himself a goal. There was plenty of goals to go around. I thought Joe Linton was amazing on the Sunday, to be honest. His goal, wow, that was tremendous. I still think Bruno is still trying to get into that 5th gear, and hopefully will very soon. And defensively, that's probably the place you would look at and go, that is the position we need a little bit more bulking to do. But we've already done it, because as of this morning, Tino Livramento has been announced as a Newcastle United player. That's right, the player who we have been, well, he's been in the stadium all weekend. I don't think it was much of a secret anymore. I think Newcastle like to make sure that everybody knows we've definitely signed a player before we actually announce him. I thought it would have been yesterday. It would have made sense. Everybody's seen him in the stadium all weekend. Let's announce it on the Monday. No, they've waited for the Tuesday, but that's all right because it suits me and it's a great thumbnail for Toon Tuesdays. But yes, you let me know your thoughts on Tino Livramento down in the comments below. People are actually talking about whether he could feature for Newcastle this weekend against Aston Villa. In terms of the lineups we put out, I thought, Botman's great, Popey's great, no Shaw because of, obviously he's had a bit of a knock. You'd imagine that he will be back in time for the weekend. Obviously Trippier will play right back. Question marks over left back. A few people talking about whether Target is quite there for this season, and I don't think Burn necessarily played the greatest of games. I would say, however, Burn was part of was part of the best Premier League defence all of last season. So to now be like, Bernie, you're out. We're going to play a right back at left back because we'd rather play him there. Some people talking about the fact that Villa have got some pretty nippy players over on that right-hand side, including Diaby, the player that Newcastle were heavily linked with at a time. Could he make Burns' time at St James's on Saturday a bit of a nightmare? Possibly, but he's dealt with it all the last season. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Tino Livramento fits into this side. It'll be interesting to see, especially for a fee, of what's said to be, I think, 31 million plus 5 in add-ons to be Trippier's backup. Does sound a little bit pricey, but expected to be is on a very long-term deal, and Trippier, who's 32 by the way, 33 this year. I still think Trippier's got a few years left in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if we even gave Trippier an extension on what he's got left. But maybe it is fair to say that this season, when we've got 3 games in a week, and he has had a couple of injuries over the last few years, that it is an immediate option to switch in and out with Trippier. It's an immediate option to switch in and out with Dan Burn, and there isn't any scares of, oh God, Trippier can't play. Who's the right back? Because Ashby's on loan. Manquillo, I believe, is out in Spain right now trying to get himself a move. It's Crafty. And is Crafty ready to play Champions League after having not played football for a year and a half? So if you look at it like that, I think right back and Livramento is a fantastic deal. The price, you could say, is a little bit high. However, I am not the man with the purse strings. I am not the man counting the pennies. I am the fan who is happy to see us bring in a 3rd player already this window. And I think, a signing, I think his contract's till 2028, so that's a hell of a deal, 5-year deal for a player, and again, in the words of FFP, will pay off 5 million a year anyway. So that is how Eddie Howe has still got the chance to bring in a few more players, and he has in fact said in his interviews that is something he is hoping to do before the end of this window, with a few links to players popping up and out already straight after the Livramento deal. And as I mentioned, after seeing those 2 sides side by side at the Sela Cup, the midfield looks strong. I liked it. I think the forward positions looked good. I would still possibly say that maybe a right-sided player, or maybe even someone who can play up front and right and in a few other positions would be good. I believe Barnes can play right or left. I believe Gordon can do it as well. But I think Eddie Howe likes to kind of have, you're there. Right, turn the table over. Right, Gordon and Barnes, you interchange. Murphy and Almiron, you interchange. Isak and Wilson, you interchange. The 3 midfielders, you interchange with the other. I don't think he necessarily plays people in another place, and I think it's because the way Eddie Howe, you stand here, you stand there, you pass here, you pass there, you track here, to be able to learn that for multi-positions, I think it might be easier to just be like, no, that's you. So because of that, I think maybe somebody else to maybe challenge on that right could be good, but I think we're all looking at the defensive positions. As I say, lining up at the back on the Sunday, Murphy was playing right back. So I think that's why Livramento's in. Now you look at centre-backs, Lascelles and Dummett. Now I actually will say I thought Dummett did alright. For somebody who hasn't played football in about 4 years, I thought came in and played a good game. And he's left-footed, he can play on that other side. Lascelles did okay. I think everyone will concentrate on that error he made down the right-hand side where he tried to kick it out and then lost the ball. And I would still say that behind Shaw, it will be good to have a bit more of a composed centre-back who can play a bit of football with their feet. And that is what we are being linked with. The Crystal Palace player, Denmark international, Andersen. Now, we were actually linked with this guy early July? We were linked with him earlier this window and things kind of went a little bit quiet. But as of the last couple of days, it's starting to come out again. Obviously, the centre-back that was heavily linked was Disasi. Obviously, we didn't get him. He's now moved on to Chelsea. And as the Premier League kind of kicks into gear this weekend, I think it will be tougher to get some of those transfers done. Or maybe even a team like Palace, where Andersen is coming from, could kind of try and hold on to him and maybe not want to let him go. And the price being rumoured for the player is, similar to what we've paid for all of our players this transfer window. 55 million Tonali, 35 Barnes, 40-ish Livramento. Andersen is being linked at or valued at around 40 million, which for a 27-year-old international who's, had 2 solid seasons in the Premier League, and it was at Fulham prior to that as well, maybe the experience is worth the cost, but and then maybe it's just the transfer market generally. It's just up in a way. But it's what happens with Newcastle when you've got the money. Teams know you've got the money. They're always going to ask for that little bit more. Now the question, and that's the thing with Livramento, we could have spent all window going, no, we only want to pay 25, and then suddenly it's the day before the end of the window and we don't get him. So I'm not going to sit here and say, wow, that was way too expensive. It was probably a little bit expensive, but it got it done. It got the deal done. Now, with the Anderson one, are we willing to go, okay, let's just pay it, let's just do it, or we will spend that little bit longer trying to get a better deal either on him or looking elsewhere. So you let me know your thoughts on the centre-back position. Do you think it's a position that we need to strengthen before the end of the window? Or do you think that Botman, Shaw, Lascelles have got it covered for another season? You think like Shaw's 31, Trippier's 32, Burnet's 30 plus. They are getting a little bit older. I think they'll have it fine this season, but it doesn't hurt to prepare for future. What about Alex Murphy? I tell you what, I thought he looked really good. He was highly thought of when he came into the club. Maybe we could take a bit of time to bring through some of these youngsters as well. So let me know your thoughts on that one down below. Let me know your thoughts on the Sela Cup. Let me know your thoughts on the new man, Tino Livramento, joining Newcastle United. And let me know your thoughts heading into the game against Villa this weekend. There'll be plenty more content this week as we build up to that game, including the first preview of the season, likely on Friday. So be sure to subscribe, don't miss out. Check out my Patreon for some extra content as well. Thank you for watching, guys. Enjoy your Tuesday, and I'll catch you later.